Howdy and welcome to the Legal Hour with Bailey and Galyen. Today we're shooting from the Legal Cafe at 114 Main Street here in downtown Fort Worth, just across from the courthouse. And today we're talking about family law with Juliette Steffe. She's out of our Burleson office and practices family law. And we're getting close to the end of the summer vacation, or summer's about to start. School's about to end. Mm-hmm. And so it's timely to talk about kind of what happens during the summers. And we have standard possession orders that the legislature drafted and gave to the courts with the caveat that here's our guidelines. Unless you have compelling reasons to do something else, follow these guidelines. Mm-hmm. And nobody likes the guidelines.
No, that's true.
I mean, nobody in their right mind wants to live by this schedule. And the summer guidelines are kind of strange and kind of hard to follow because there's notice provisions.
Yes. You've got the 14-day notice for designation. What I have found, actually, you're talking about, the courts don't like to stray too much from what the guidelines are.
Right.
But what I have found a lot of parents wanting to do here lately, especially with the kids being when they're older, is doing week on, week off throughout the summer with an election for, they each get 2 weeks,
right.
14 days notice. Or
I'm seeing a lot of that as well. And I'm seeing that a lot of folks who are coming in really kind of want to do a 50-50 kind of program. And when that's workable, it's great. If the kids live too far apart from the school in one of the two houses, that can complicate matters.
Yeah.
But what I've seen a lot is a lot of the judges saying, well, I'm going to follow the expanded guideline, but when it comes to summer, I think we can do 50-50. Are you seeing that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm even seeing in some cases where they're doing each gets 2 weeks in June, each gets 2 weeks in July, week on, week off until school starts.
Right. And a lot of folks are not set up for this 30-day block.
Yes.
Saying, okay, I have to hire a daycare center for 30 days, or 2 weeks because I only get 2 weeks of vacation and things like that. It brings to mind the point that almost every court's going to require mediation before they'll give you a final trial for a couple of reasons. One, their docket is really heavy, and since so many cases settle in mediation, it helps them out. But it's a reminder that the rules and the guidelines that the courts are having to follow in terms of how we establish visitation and child support and everything else is binding on the judges, but it's not binding on the parties.
That's exactly right. What I often tell people before and definitely during and sometimes even after mediation is there are a lot of things that we can do in mediation that a court either won't or can't do.
Right.
We can be real creative in mediation.
And you know what I have found in a divorce situation that is really helpful to getting people towards mediation is frequently one of them wants to keep the house and buy the other spouse's equity. Well, a court can't really do that very easily,
right? Because
the court doesn't know what the house is worth until it sells.
Right.
Now, we can all guess.
Yep.
Okay. But a lot of times, and I know you think this is true too, we'll be working a case and we're talking to our clients and we're looking at the documents and seeing where all the bodies are buried and how much money is in which account and all that good stuff. And we can tell our clients within 15 cents what the judge has to do if we actually go to trial 6 months from now and put all this evidence in front of them. This is what the judge is required to do.
Yep.
And frequently their response is, well, that's a terrible idea. I mean, that's going to be a tax nightmare.
Right.
Or the cash flow won't support that, or
right.
We're setting this person up to fail, or my kid's in select soccer. This will never work. Okay? And so they get a little bit warmer feelings about the possibility of mediating. And people forget that over 95% of the cases settle anyway.
Yes.
Okay? The two smartest people in the room, mom and dad, usually. Usually.
Yeah.
can make better decisions than the judge can.
Yeah, well, they should be the two best people on the planet
Yeah.
to make decisions regarding their children. Mm-hmm. And judges don't like to micromanage.
No, do you really want the judge raising your kids? Okay? They got a big black dress, but you don't know a whole lot about them, and they don't know anything about your kids. Or your mother-in-law, or, any of the other problems going on.
Right.
So, yeah, I really try to convince folks that most folks getting a divorce or going through a custody dispute, by the time they get to me, they usually have a history of more good memories than bad.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, that's true.
But they've seen on TV that this is supposed to be a bloodbath.
Yes.
Okay? Mm-hmm. And man, if you have a bloodbath, the attorneys make out like bandits.
Yes, they
okay?
do.
I mean, you're paying $400 an hour or $500 an hour per side for us to go call the other one a mud fence. Okay? Mm-hmm. And it's not terribly helpful. And it's not nearly as satisfying as people think it's going to be.
No, exactly right. And you know what I tell people a lot, actually, is, especially when you've got kids involved, right? Mm-hmm. We can go into court and, she is a druggie, alcoholic, whatever, and he is the worst at it, and we can sling that mud, right?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. That's what they're paying us to do, right? Do our job. But at the end of the day, especially if you have children, okay, you are connected at the hip till you die, not till they're 18, till you die.
And they don't get cheaper after 18.
No, they absolutely do not. And the best thing is to learn how to co-parent,
Well, you and I have both been in cases where we've had to tell the clients, if we go in there and we tell all the bad stuff about them and they tell all the bad stuff about us, that judge is going to call CPS.
Yeah, yep.
Okay, and you're both going to lose.
Yeah.
Okay, do you really want to do this?
Yeah.
Okay, do you really want a drug test if you're both going to fail? Mm-hmm. Okay, but...
Well, and to further that argument too, I tell them, look, we can go in there, and, I'll do my job, opposing counsel will do their job, and you both are going to look horrible. CPS is going to get called in, and you know who gets hurt at the end? The kids. The kids, because now you hate each other even more.
That's right. That's right.
And I often have to tell people, I'm sure you do too, you've got to love the children more than you hate each other.
That's right. And kids are pretty resilient, but they know that they love mom and they love dad, and if mom and dad are bad-mouthing each other, the kids are not happy about that. They don't like that. I mean, they're stuck in the middle. They didn't ask for this nonsense.
Right.
And so it's hard to tell people when they're hurting, that they need to be a bigger person and that sort of thing. But that's one nice thing about the waiting periods that we have. Mm-hmm. People come in and say, she didn't come home Thursday night. I want a divorce today. Okay? And you say, well, it's a 60-day waiting period to get a divorce no matter what. And a week later, they're coming back in saying, we kissed and made up. We're all right. The other thing that I think people have to kind of think about is on TV, you see an awful lot of stuff that's not true in Texas. Oh, he won't sign the divorce decree. Mm-hmm. He's not going to let me have the divorce. In Texas, slavery went out a long time ago.
Yes.
And if you want a divorce, nothing can stop you. Okay? If he won't sign that divorce decree, guess who will?
Judge.
Judge will sign it for you.
Judge
all
will
right?
sign it, absolutely.
And the other thing I see is people get this battlefield mentality. Mm-hmm. How many clients have you had in the last month say, I saw you talking to that other attorney and you even smiled and shook their hand. What the hell's wrong with you? Whose side are you on?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I've been working with this attorney for about 30 years, and I know them, and they're professional, and I asked him how his kid did at the soccer tournament.
Right.
Okay? No, I didn't sell you out, and no, the judge didn't take a bribe. I've been doing this almost 40 years, and I have never seen a judge take a bribe or do anything unethical. Most of them would punch you in the nose, and then they'd call the FBI on you if you offered them something, okay? So just remember that TV is a fictional drama, okay? And what we really want to do is make smart, adult, grown-up decisions to protect the best interests of the children. And most judges really are not going to let someone hit a home run on every pitch, okay? They're going to try and do a fair job dividing the property and working with the people so that everybody gets a fair shake and the kids don't get messed up. And you are not going to hit a home run on every pitch.
Absolutely.
And the judge is going to be fair. Some people think once a judge hears that Daddy wore white after Labor Day, they're going to throw that law book out the window and just give me everything.
Right.
Ever seen that happen?
Oh my gosh. No, the other thing I was going to tell you, and I often do tell people this, about us having good working relationships with, the usual suspects, we'll call them.
Even the judges.
Even the judges,
Yeah.
It is so much better at the end of the day to respect opposing counsel, and it just makes for a much better divorce, quite frankly. If you've got somebody on the other side who knows the law, who knows the judge, who knows you, right? And you've got a good working relationship, oftentimes you're going to do better than when you get opposite somebody that you're just always going at it.
Oh, yeah.
Always.
Oh, yeah. And your attorney, if you're shopping for an attorney, you want an attorney who is going to maintain their professional detachment.
Right.
You do not want them to get emotionally invested in your case to where it makes it hard to do your job. Okay,
Right.
And to give your client really good advice.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing makes me madder than at the end of a trial I see another attorney crying on the other side. Like, really?
Yeah.
So, yeah, the practice of law is like almost any other field. There are nuances to it that only people in the field know. I liken it to defined terms in the family code. And this is true in almost every field of endeavor, but there are words that you and I use around the kitchen table that we all think we know what it means. And we do, except when it's being used as a defined term in a specialized field where it may have a completely different meaning, like the word consideration. We all know what consideration means. Practice consideration in your dealings with people. But if you're dealing with a contract, it's the money. Okay? Yeah. And so there's a lot of well-intended but wrong advice out there.
Well, let me ask you that. What is the definition of primary parent in the Texas Family Code?
Buddy. One person, here's the way it goes with the family code. One parent is supposed to be designated as the person with the exclusive right to designate the primary residence of the child for purposes like what school they're going to go to and things like that. And usually the primary residence is limited to a certain geographic area so nobody can pick up the kids and move to Montana and make it hard for them to get to see the other parent. But the court doesn't always have to appoint someone as the primary parent. Frequently we have cases where no one is the primary parent. We simply say, the kids have been going to this school district since they started school. We want them to finish school in that school district. Somebody's got to live in that school district. That's where they're going to live. And we don't give anyone the right to designate the primary residence. Now, the court's hands are tied. They got to do one of two things. They've got to designate what school district the kids are going to be in, or which parent's going to get to make that decision. And again, in mediation, you can work a lot of that out. Many, many years ago, it was hard for dads to get a square deal in family court with regard to kids. And you've all heard this stuff about, I had to prove she is an unfit mother.
Yep.
Okay? And the women who did not have primary custody felt like they were wearing a scarlet letter.
Absolutely.
Okay? And it was a terrible stigma to not have primary custody of your babies. That hasn't been the law for the last 30 or 40 years, but people still tell that story.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And you know, women are sometimes, I think mainly women, are apologetic about, I don't have the primary right. Now, they may be the best parent in the world, but if they're international airline pilots and they're out of the country 4 nights a week, they're not a great candidate to have primary.
Right.
Because daycare you can find, night care not so much.
Not so much. That's right. Absolutely.
And so, how do you try to battle these demons of these perceived stigmas and the wrong advice they got from Bubba at the bowling alley?
Well, you know, a lot of times people come in, and I brought up that specific example because a lot of times, and I'm sure you see this, people come in and they're like, well, I want sole custody.
Oh, yeah.
And I say, what does that mean to you?
Right.
You know, or I want primary. Again, what does that mean to you? And a lot of times, and I'm not judging lay people for not knowing the correct terms, right? But a lot of times, you know, I just talk to them, okay, let's just talk about what it is, in fact, you want and why.
Yeah.
Okay? And then we go into talking about, you know, whether or not it's going to be an ISD restriction or a county restriction or whatever. If it's going to be week on, week off, and they're, you know, in middle school or whatever, okay, you like the ISD, let's keep it to the ISD, you know, and feeder schools, right?
Yeah.
So I often just, because like you said, they see something on TV or they hear something or they see something on the internet. And
or, you know, it's a sitcom from New York City. And guess what? They have different laws over there.
Yes.
Okay? What I hear a lot, they say, I want sole custody, for example.
Yeah.
What I actually hear is, I want the judge to say I'm the better person and that this is their fault. I need someone to validate me. Okay, well, that is not the judge's job. Okay, the judge is there to do a fair deal for everybody, avoid a shooting in the parking lot after the hearing, and protect the best interests of the kids. Okay, so if you think you want to go to court because I want someone to say I'm the better person, or this is going to be the straw that makes him quit drinking. Or if you go into court for any purpose other than the stated purpose, you're in the wrong place.
Well, and you know what I've seen a trend towards the judges doing here lately is when in situations like that, when it's like, I want to go in and say he cheated, and I want to go in and say that she drinks, and that they're a horrible, horrible, horrible person. You know, both y'all are horrible. I'm seeing more and more judges talking directly to the litigants, saying, this is not good for the kids. I mean, you know, and I've seen people get dressed up and down and they feel like they're about to win, you know, because they just said how bad their former partner or spouse is. And they get yelled at just as much as the other parent by the judge because nobody's even talking about the best interests of the children at that point.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I just find it interesting. I mean, just yesterday I sat there and watched 2 separate judges do that in 2 separate cases, and you know that both of the litigants, they're sitting up straight at the beginning, and you just see them kind of slouch down.
I remember one judge. I sat through 2 hearings waiting for mine, and in both hearings, this judge, who will remain nameless, said, "You are the 2 worst parents I have ever seen in my life." And just one trial after another. And it's funny. You know, there's also some folks who think the best defense is good offense. And I'm going to go in there and I'm going to make up stuff and say terrible, terrible things about them. Because they won't be able to disprove it. How do you disprove a negative? I'm going to say that, you know, he's you know, I don't know, abusing Twizzlers. You know, I don't know. And I got to tell you, I didn't believe it when I first started practicing law, but most of our judges are really accomplished lie detectors.
This is absolutely true. Uh-huh.
They can spot it a mile away. And honestly, folks, when you're shopping for a family law attorney, you want to find an attorney that you're comfortable with, that you can talk to, and that you have confidence in. But if you're out shopping for a lawyer who's going to tell you exactly what you want to hear, you're going to be really disappointed in the end result.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because I've had a lot of people, come in and say, "Well, you're the 17th attorney I've talked to, and I don't like the truth telling that you're doing."
Right. Right.
I had one client one time come in, and I'd say, "What about this?" And he looked me dead square in the face and says, "What answer do you want to hear?" So, folks, you wouldn't hire a doctor who did things like that. You wouldn't hire any kind of I wouldn't take my car into a dealership. What would you like me to say is wrong with your engine? Okay. Shopping for an attorney is a hard thing to do. It truly is. I have trouble shopping for a doctor because I'm not in that field. So what can I do? I can look at their credentials. I can get recommendations from folks who've used these doctors. It's kind of the same way with an attorney.
Absolutely.
Look at the credentials. I will tell you this: if you have a complex family law matter, you don't want someone who says, "I did a divorce just 3 years ago." Okay? A lot of lawyers will take anything walks in the door.
Yeah.
But you'd kind of like them to be somewhat familiar with the family code, and even better with the judge.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
So, when you go into mediation, maybe we should explain how mediation works, because it's a little different in family law than other types of civil mediation.
Yeah.
So, tell the folks, what happens in a mediation.
All right. So mediation, mediator is I actually am certified family law mediator as well.
There you go.
But anyway, mediation, what I like to tell everybody about mediation is it's a great way to fashion something that y'all can live with. And again, going back to what I said earlier about these two parents, these two biological parents, they are the best people in the world to know what's in the best interest of the children, okay? So for them to fashion an agreement is way better than for a judge to do it, okay? I mean, all due respect to the judges, I'm just saying. But what I tell them is it's an opportunity for them to come up with something that they can live with, okay? You've got a mediator. A mediator is not a decision maker, right? They're not a judge. They don't make decisions. They try to help y'all realize what the judge is probably going to do, or what they think the judge is going to do. None of us, our crystal balls are still. Is yours still in the shop?
Mine doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
I've had it for years. It is significantly unreliable.
Yeah, so none of us know 100% what any judge is going to do on any given day. Sometimes it depends on the day. Sometimes it depends on the case they just heard before you, or the day before, whatever. Okay, but we have a pretty good idea. Yeah. We're with these judges all the time. Mediators, a lot of them are retired judges. A lot of them are retired attorneys who have been, working with these judges, in front of these judges for many years. In any event, they've got a really good idea too, and they're an objective third party. We're our client's advocates, so
they're not ruling on evidence.
Yeah, no, absolutely
They're just
not.
brokering a deal.
Yeah, and I had a couple of them in the last couple of days. Normally what happens is that y'all meet up in an office, and for example, me and my client are in one room, and the opposing party and their attorney are in another room. They never even see each other.
Right.
And mostly what'll happen is the lawyers and the mediator get together for about 5 minutes, and just here's the brief overview of the case. All right, mediator starts in one room, usually the petitioners, whoever filed for the divorce, and gets to lay of the land. What do you want? Why do you want it? Here's what I think the judge is going to do. That's unreasonable. No, that sounds good. Whatever. Go to the other room, same thing. And sometimes I find whether it's my client or the other side, they just need to be heard by somebody too.
That is so true.
Yeah.
That is so true.
And mediators are good people to listen.
People in these circumstances have been at home practicing their speech. Every time they get in the shower, they are practicing their speech because they want to tell their story.
Yep.
And sometimes they just need to get to tell it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that, at least it's been my experience, that a lot of times they have more of an opportunity with a mediator than a judge. Because some of these judges, you and I both know, after 10
Move along,
minutes,
counsel.
yep,
We've heard enough.
Exactly. And they don't want to hear the rest of the story. And your client's like, well, I didn't get to tell my story. So mediation is a good place for them to tell that story. But at the end of the day, you're negotiating. You're in two separate rooms. Mediators going back and forth. Sometimes there might be another attorney, an amicus attorney or something. And hopefully, at the end of the day, you broker a deal, right? And you come out with what I like to call the holy grail of family law cases, a mediated settlement agreement, or MSA. And they can't be changed. It's wonderful.
Irrevocable.
Even the judge can't change them.
That's right.
Yeah. So you come out of a mediation with one of those, and I've got some funny stories about this. I'll bet you do too. But I have to tell clients every single time, especially in a divorce, right? You are not divorced today.
Right.
You're not divorced until a judge signs it.
That's right. But nobody can change their mind. No takebacks.
Yep.
It's a done deal. But what if no buts?
Yeah.
It's a done deal. So your attorney will always tell you, don't sign this unless you want to be bound by it. Okay? Because we really don't want you to call us tomorrow and say, you son of a gun, you talked me into that. No, you're a big boy. This is the decision you made. What would you suggest for folks to consider before they even hire an attorney? Let's say we're reaching the end of our rope. We may want to split up. We don't know what we want to do. What kind of advice would you give folks before they even start shopping for counsel?
Before they even do, are we talking with kids or without kids?
Oh, either way. Pick your poison.
Well, I mean, if they're okay, especially with kids. All right, I'm going to go back to what I said before. You got to think about your kids first, and how this is going to affect them. And like we've talked about intermittently here, I mean, the mudslinging in divorces, it might feel good in the moment.
Not as good as you think it's going to feel.
Exactly.
But yeah.
But you've got to think about the kids. And I don't care if they're 5 or 15 or heck, even 25.
Sure.
I mean, they're still going to be affected by it. And so I think you've got to think about that. When you're talking to other people, whether it's somebody at the office or a family member, whatever, and they're saying to you, well, in my divorce, this is what I got, and I think you should get that too.
Right.
I mean, that's, I don't know how often you get that. I get that almost on the daily.
Leroy in Arkansas in 1957, he got the washing machine. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact of the matter is even if the circumstances might be similar, say there are 3 kids and dad cheated and mom drinks, okay? The actual facts of every case are so unique and different in every single case, right? So when the people come in and they've been listening to friends and family and coworkers and stuff, I say, just forget about all that. Let's talk about your case. Let's talk about the facts. But at the end of the day, what you said about finding an attorney that's right for you, shop around, and find somebody that you feel knows what they're talking about, okay? And isn't sitting there, hold on, let me Google that. Oh, yeah, okay, this is what we're going to do, okay? Let me AI
Google.
this. How many Google attorneys do you think are out there?
My heavens. I can't tell you how many people, have, well, I Googled it and I found a case from West Virginia from the 1800s that says you're wrong. West Virginia doesn't control the Texas Family Code. Sorry. The other thing I would tell you, too, is don't talk to the kids about the adult problems.
Oh my gosh,
Don't
absolutely.
burden your kids with that stuff. It's none of their business, frankly. And there's well, they deserve to know. No, they really don't. Why would you burden a child with that? And sometimes I had a mom come in and she was just madder than a wet hen because it's Daddy's vacation and he's taking them to Six Flags.
Oh, how dare he?
And she's just mad because there he is, a Disneyland dad, making me look bad. He's spending all this money on the kids, and he's buying their affection, and he's trying to play favorites, and she says all this in front of the kids, and the kids feel terrible. And I told her, I said, look, if you really have to vent, you tell the kids, excuse me, Mama's going next door for a minute. I got to go borrow a cup of sugar. And you go over to the neighbor's house and you tell your neighbor what a so-and-so husband is. Kick her dog. When you get it out of your system, come back and don't burden the kids with all that.
You know, and to that point, I just had to talk to a couple people about this yesterday. Don't pass messages through children.
Oh, buddy.
And again, I don't care if they're 5, 15, or 25. Do not do that. The kids don't need to feel responsible for their parents.
And they're not always reliable messengers either.
There's that. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, no, I think that is an absolutely excellent point.
The other thing I think I would say is talk. Even if you're mad at each other, most of us can find 5 or 10 minutes to have a quiet cup of coffee and talk about what is most important in the whole world to both of us, which is our kids. And have a meaningful adult conversation about how do we take care of the kids, how are we going to do this, how is it going to work. And I'll just tell you, nobody in their right mind wants to follow one of these visitation schedules.
No.
Great-grandma is never going to visit on the right weekend to get to see the babies, okay? Somebody's going to have a wedding, and it's all going to be messed up. Y'all need to be able to be flexible enough to swap out with each other. And the first line of every visitation schedule says, access is whatever mom and dad agree on. If they just can't agree on what day it is, well, then we've got 15 typed pages of nonsense that y'all can struggle through and try and abide by as a fallback. But don't use the fallback unless you really have to.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say that right as you started saying it. Like I always tell people, y'all can agree to whatever you want to agree to, and hopefully you can co-parent and get there, right? Absent the agreement, here are the rules. It's that simple, right?
Yep.
So, but unfortunately, a lot of people, they can't co-parent, and they got to follow those rules.
Yeah, and it's a shame. It was funny. Somebody called me the other day and told me they were in custody court in a different county from here, across the Trinity River, and they got sent to take a co-parenting class on Zoom. And the class that they had to watch was a class that I taught with a couple of other attorneys and judges 25 years ago. They're still using that tape. Okay, so the basics haven't changed. Okay, they're still running those same tapes. Juliette, why don't you tell them where you office and how they can get in touch with you?
All right, so I office in Burleson. It's right off of 35 in Renfro. I'm right on the county line, Tarrant and Johnson County. The phone number there is 817-263-3000. Address is 312 East Renfro Street. We're on the second floor.
All right. So when you have a question, call us at Bailey and Galyen. We offer free interviews for family law. You can come in, you can ask us, you can say, my neighbor said this, is that right? And we'll say, maybe. Okay, we'll tell you, but it's a free interview, okay? And take advantage of that because, some attorneys do charge a fee for you to come in and visit with them. But a lot of times, what happens is someone will come in and chat with me and I'll kind of tell them what the law is and what they can expect. And then I never hear from them again because they said, well, maybe the grass is not greener when I divorce. Maybe I'm going to stay there.
That's right.
And I would say probably 20% of the people that come see me and file for divorce or respond to a divorce end up non-suiting and kissing and make up and reconciling.
Yep,
I
absolutely.
mean, you don't want to go into it with the idea that this is a battle.
Right.
Okay, we're trying to solve a problem, and hopefully we can help you deal with a delicate situation with your dignity intact and most of your money still in your pocket and without messing up your kids. And so that needs to be the goal. We'll talk to you soon next time here at the Legal Hour with Bailey and Galyen.